Good afternoon, and welcome back to College Football on Tap, brought to you by the On Tap Sports Net. I am Chris White, joined alongside by Bruno Oger. Bruno,
how's it
heartbreaker going? Saturday.
Yeah,
I know that's all we've been talking about, so let's skip the formalities and jump right into it.
Yeah, so obviously we're both big Notre Dame fans. If you saw my live reaction after the game, I had bloodshot eyes. I was really brokenhearted, not happy with the outcome of the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. Very tough physical matchup. Notre Dame seemed to be the better team, at least the way that looked at watching the whole game. And they started to show that throughout the second half after Ohio State had the early score to make it 10-0. And Notre Dame came storming back, making it a 14-10 game. And then the defense made a big stop with about 4 minutes left, and you kind of felt like the game was over at that point, as long as Notre Dame got 2 first downs. Well, they did get the 2 first downs, but a little bit.
They decided to keep throwing the ball for some reason.
Yeah, so didn't really seem to make a lot of sense in terms of the late play calling. And then the ultimate gaffe, at the end of the game, Notre Dame gives up a touchdown on one of the last 2 plays where they didn't have 11 men on the field. They played a player short, and nobody caught it for 2 plays. They got away with it on the first play because Ohio State had Kyle McCord throw the ball, and then they went with their big running back, Trayvon Henderson, to plug it in late. Inexcusable, terrible job by the coaching staff to allow that to happen. Like, you gotta make sure that you're ready, especially in that moment of the game. You can't go 2 plays with only 10 men on the field.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make a mistake against, a top 10 squad like Ohio State. Any team of that caliber, you can't make a mistake, especially the last 2 plays of the game. I mean, that was a heartbreaker. I don't think Ohio State's a bad team. I don't think they're necessarily great. I don't think they're in the conversation with Georgia and Michigan and Texas. But watching Saturday, a lot of teams both teams had trouble moving the ball, running the ball, throwing the ball. I think Hartman and McCord had a little over 2 apiece, 230, 250 yards. I mean, nobody really blew anything up. Estime was missing for a lot of the game on Notre Dame's side.
He was on the field a lot. It was interesting because they used 5 different running backs in the first quarter of the game. And didn't even, we were late in the second quarter, and I saw he had 6 carries for 25 yards. And I'm like, or that was him coming into the third quarter. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, why is the guy only got 6 carries and 6 carries for 25 yards? You're averaging over 4 per carry, which is the main goal. I don't understand what was going on there.
My thoughts on are they probably wanted Chris Tyree to get in there and change the speed up a little bit. But, they were sending at least 4 every play, and Tyree's not a big guy. He's a fast guy, a lot of heart, but I don't understand. There were some flaws in the coaching, I feel, but I'm here on a podcast and not coaching a college football team, so maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think from the viewer's point of view and not trying to be too critical, I think Notre Dame's coaching staff had a big part of the loss. I think they failed the players a little bit there, and that's how I seen it.
Is that Al Golden? Is he the defensive coordinator?
Oh, okay. Yes.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
that's inexcusable. It's definitely a big loss on the coaches.
Yeah, it all is. It just seemed like nothing was really well planned out. And the one thing that I thought Notre Dame had to come in and do was not play to lose. And it felt a lot of that game they were playing not to lose. And they probably had a good shot at stepping on Ohio State's throat, because I didn't see Ohio State having the ability to move the ball very well. McCord did not fancy me at all. I couldn't believe the way he got up on the bench and started pumping up the crowd. I was like, you just had the most average college football game of all time. Yeah, I mean, he's
like it's a big win for the organization, for the school, for the fans, whatever. But like, it was nothing special. Like, I would have been a little embarrassed if Notre Dame won and they stormed the field.
Yeah, I mean, they would have. So I don't know.
No doubt. But I mean, it was nothing to write home about. If I'm Marcus Freeman coming off that game, I want them watching tape and hitting the weights and stuff on Sunday. Like, that is nuts how that game should have gone. Notre Dame easily could have won that game 48-21 or
they just
something in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I really got on it. I mean, it's hard for me to even talk about it. Notre Dame plays Duke next week. Another ranked versus ranked matchup. I think it's the only ranked versus ranked matchup on the slate next week. I could be wrong. There might have been one or two other ones with the SEC play, but yeah, we'll see. Is Colorado ranked still?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because
don't necessarily.
I know they play USC next week, so that could have been one next week as well. But obviously we'll get into Colorado as well here, and we could kind of go into that right now. Big ranked versus ranked matchup, all the hype around Coach Prime in Colorado, and it didn't go that well for Colorado. I know what we said from the start was Colorado, Oregon was going to score on you quick and early, and you got to find a way to punch them in the face. And it was not like that. Oregon one scored on them quick and early, and there was no turning back.
Yeah. We had mentioned on Friday they have to come right out of the gate, punching, swinging, scoring, and they ended up getting their first touchdown in the fourth. Was it?
Yeah, it was late in the game. I mean, it was already the TV time on it, so
it was already 40 something points up. The backups for Oregon have been in for a while, but maybe we're seeing what Colorado should be. I mean, nobody expected them to go out undefeated this year except for maybe Dion himself. But I wouldn't necessarily call this like exposure. I don't think they got exposed. I think we're seeing exactly what we should be seeing them in their first year of this new squad.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my opinion was, and I kept on saying that for a while. Like, I mean, I even have people that I'm coworkers with. I kept on saying, like, you guys are all hyped up on this team, but I'm telling you, they're gonna go 8-4, maybe 7-5. If they go 9-3, that's incredible. But I didn't see that happen. So.
Yeah, and 7-5 is incredible. Over 500 is incredible. I think Vegas had them at like 3.5 wins at week 0.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's anything over 3 wins, 4 wins is incredible. If they could take 1 or 2 divisional or conference wins, I mean, they're right where they should be. They're gonna be fine. When they play USC and a few more of these teams, it's gonna keep hurting, but they have a good squad there, and I don't think they necessarily did anything wrong. They're just not quite there. They're not ready yet.
Yeah. Well, next week, once again, they'll be playing USC, and this one will be in Boulder. And I know the Fox Sports team's heading there, so it's gonna be that national stage again. I believe that is an early game, though it's not a late one. I think it might be like at 11 a.m. actually. But they're still going to be the big time game, exposed for the hour that they're on. And that was decided before they even played Oregon. Like, I was already seeing the commercials for Fox goes to blah, 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 or goes to Boulder. And I just,
Boulder next week.
Like, that might not be a great idea. I understand that we're getting a lot of we're going to see Colorado a lot. Like, people want to see them. They're getting high ratings. And I'm sure last week's game was high rated as well, but it's going to get to a point where, the novelty wears off nice and early this year, because they're going to be 3-2 after next week. And if they're not, I'll be dumbfounded by it. I mean, I saw USC is like a 20.5 point favorite, which, we did kind of see, and we'll highlight later when we run down the top 25. USC did drop this week because of the way they played against Arizona State. So not that USC has been overwhelmingly impressive thus far, but we know what they're capable of, at least with the football and Caleb Williams.
Yeah, no, and and kind of how I mentioned earlier, I don't really think Ohio State's like in that conversation with Georgia and Michigan, Texas. I don't think anybody this year has really been that outstanding. Like nobody is just completely demolishing these high-ranking teams.
Yeah, I mean Georgia's been right there.
South Carolina was one score, and
yeah, I mean every game has been pretty close. Once again this week, Michigan didn't. Well, they pushed the spread. They didn't cover it though. But and that was all late. They played great second half football there. But yeah,
Rutgers started out looking good.
Yeah, I thought for sure we were going to be in for one that was going to go down to the final minutes. The way the whole first half was kind of working out. But
I might have thrown $20 on a live money line and kind of just pissed away money for fun.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I do that. I do enough of that as well. So
now they were, second drive, I think, maybe third drive, they busted out like a 30, 35, 40-yard rush. They got called back for holding, and
yeah,
I was just sitting there like on my phone at work, like, man, that fucking sucks.
Yeah, because I felt like at that point they were going to be able to take a 2-score lead if that was held right there. And yeah, it was still 5 minutes left in the first quarter or whatever it might have been, but
completely kills your momentum. And
yeah. But yeah, that was a very interesting matchup. And like we already just said, kind of with the Colorado thing, it's going to continue to show next week. USC hasn't been that impressive, so we'll see what kind of team they are when they go and play this game that everybody's still probably going to be watching for at least another week or two at Colorado. So we'll see what ends up coming from it. A team that I'm going to kind of skip the line here in terms of what we want to talk about, but a team that has been very impressive in terms of just the defense and still a Pac-12 team, and a team that might be a top 4 competitor at the end of the year, Utah, pulling off a win against UCLA this week, once again without star quarterback Cam Rising, as that came early in before the start.
Yeah, that news broke during game day, I believe.
Yeah, so we were expecting, we talked about on Friday that Cam Rising was going to play, that the spread jumped up because of Cam Rising playing even, and I actually just saw the spread drop down, and then I was like, that's interesting. So then I went and looked and saw that Cam Rising wasn't playing. But once again, Utah comes out there, not really the most offensive guru team right now. I think that it will get
21-14, I believe.
It was 14-7.
Okay, so it was a 1-score game still, just a little less moving the ball.
Yeah, so they didn't. UCLA only had 1 score the whole game. Kind of been the thing with Utah this year. They've won games 20-13, 14-7 now. Who was it they played in that week 0 game? They had a big week 0 game that was really close as well, and that was a ranked versus ranked matchup. So
I do not remember that one.
Yeah, it's none. I can't remember right off the top of my head either. I know it'll come to me in 20 minutes, but they ended up pulling out another big win. And they're keeping them all 1-score games. They're not blowing anyone out, but the defense is tough. Kind of gives you that idea of maybe Notre Dame in 2012 when they went to the final against Alabama. That defense did a lot of big stops towards late in the games that won them games when the offense wasn't that impressive. And right now, without their star quarterback, Utah hasn't been impressive offensively. They're playing their third string quarterback now, as their second string quarterback wasn't really laying up the scoreboard, and they're finding ways to win. So they're going to be a team that you have to look out for once Cam Rising is back, and if he does return from this ACL injury.
Yeah, and this is a Utah team without their number 1 target. I can't remember his name. He got drafted last year, the tight end. Is it Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah, I was gonna say Dalton Kincaid.
Okay. I think he's with Buffalo now. This offense is completely different just with how with losing him and no Cam Rising, and they're still coming out here. Like you said, they're not putting up a crazy amount of points, but their defense is getting the job done and keeping them in the conversation.
Yeah, and that's something that, you don't see from a lot of the Pac-12 schools in general. They're not really the most defensive prowess teams. USC definitely not a defensive juggernaut. They get a lot of that top talent, but for some reason the defense still tends to give up quite a bit of points. I know that they gave up like 28 against San Jose State this year. They just gave up 28 against Arizona State. And if you're going to be in those top tier schools, like, you don't want to be giving up that many points because it's hard to keep on having a score. And when you run into a team that does both pretty well, you're going to have a difficult time winning that football game. And I think if Utah gets healthy, they're going to be that team for a lot of them. I know Washington's up there too, but Washington might be the number one team in the country if you watch the way they play football. It's nuts. But
yeah, they look very good. Michael Penix Jr. is just unreal.
Yeah, it's a wild team that they have there right now in Utah. So, in Washington.
Washington.
So the Pac-12 gets more and more interesting every week, but did want to kind of like highlight that Utah win over UCLA just because without the Cam Rising, again, no offense, but not really necessary to win the game as they can show.
And even only putting up 14 points, having your defense kind of hold the team down there, UCLA is still a ranked opponent. I mean, that's still a quality win.
Yeah. Yeah, they were ranked 22nd coming into this matchup against UCLA, or against Utah. So they were a ranked team before this. And they'll have an opportunity. I'm sure with another win, they'll be ranked again, depending on what's next on their tap. But they're a team that will hover around the top 25 throughout the whole season, as a lot of these teams in the Pac-12 are going to do, because all of them seem to have something that works out well for them. Including Washington State. This week had a big upset over Oregon State.
Yeah, well, that was a high scoring game, I believe, right? That was like a 38-35 affair or something like that.
Yeah, Washington State was up 2 touchdowns almost every single time I looked at it. That was me kind of focusing on Notre Dame at that point. I can't really say I watched too many of these 6:30 games besides that one. My main focus was on the Irish game. And then, I ended up watching the Washington game after, which is why I had the opinion of like, wow, this team's just insane. And like everything I've seen, they're just awesome. But yeah, that was a very interesting game. I know it was 21 versus 14, another one of our ranked versus ranked matchups for the week. And Washington State was just looked really good offensively. Every single time I looked up, it looked like they were driving, moving the ball 15, 20 yards per play. It just didn't look like there was any stopping them, any chance that they had the opportunity to have the ball. And I know there was a lot of highlights being shown in between with the Notre Dame game and stuff too. And it just looked like Washington State was a very impressive team. I didn't really expect it. I thought Oregon State would come out there and be the better team, because I'm just used to seeing them in that kind of spotlight, I guess, where they are a top 20 team. And I don't normally see that from the Cougs. And the Cougs came out there and proved me wrong and really played a good game. It'll be interesting to see what they do the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, I know we touched a little bit on Friday about DJ Ugabungu's skills under center. They moved the ball around well. They just came up a little short. Washington State's a decent, sneaky team, right around where they belong, high 20s. But I did not catch too much of that game.
Yeah. I just
obviously a little other shit going on.
Yeah, the one thing that I know that's been really impressive for him and continue to be impressive for him has been the style of play of Cameron Ward, quarterback who's throwing for high percentages and is also running the ball really well for him right now. And that's
the quarterback you mentioned Friday that was also the leading rusher?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was very similar in terms of, he actually did not rush the ball that well this game. He did carry the ball 9 times, which is more than any other running back on their team, but he only had 14 yards rushing. So they did come to stop him, it looks like, but all he did then was throw for over 400 yards passing.
Yeah, you cut his legs out from under him, and he just starts using his arm.
Yeah, so he's going to be an interesting player to look out for. And Oregon State falling from 14 to 19 this week ahead of a Friday night matchup, a ranked versus ranked matchup in Utah. So there we go. We kind of just highlighted it. Didn't even know that they were playing each other this week, and we got Utah versus Oregon State to kick off the whole week on Friday. So pretty cool little Friday night, 8 p.m. Central start time. Gives me a little bit of something to look forward to before the work week starts. So
right. I know short week and all for Utah. Still no news on Cam Rising, and with that, being said, a short week, you only lose that day. They're gonna have to do something about moving that ball around, because the defense can be great all day, but you still need to score, and back-to-back ranked opponents, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be a little beat up. So we got to see how that'll come out. You said that's a Friday night game?
Yeah, Friday at 8 o'clock. So they do get most of their rest in there because it is a late start.
Yeah, you're only losing about 12 hours there.
Yeah, definitely. So that'll be an interesting one to look forward to as we can continue to kind of see both those teams progress. Really big statement game for both teams there. So hopefully a Cam Rising plays for Utah.
Yeah, we're definitely going to keep an eye on that, and hopefully some news breaks before Friday or college game day again at least, and kind of get an idea.
Yeah,
but
another big matchup from this past week, we had Ole Miss versus Alabama.
Did not get it done.
Yeah, so Ole Miss, I mean, it was a very defensive game. Again, I feel like we're saying it a lot this year with college football because a lot of these big time schools aren't scoring. And I mean, Milroe, the quarterback for Alabama, by no means was really impressive. Again, just doesn't look like there really is a solved quarterback situation there, just because he hasn't played up to the level that I think Alabama would want him to be at. But they were enough to beat Ole Miss. I don't know exactly what happened. It was 6-3 Ole Miss I saw. It was halftime, and all of a sudden I look and it's 17-6, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck happened in this game? How did Alabama just take the lead all of a sudden? So I was in the middle of going to a wake at that point and was unable to see, but it seemed like within a half hour that I was inside that building, a lot of things flip-flopped. So, but I looked at the line and whatnot, didn't see anything outstanding from Milroe again. And then a little bit, because I was able to watch most of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, just, it was a very bland, basic game, it seemed like. A lot of defense. Ole Miss had some chances to try and score and get back into it, but Alabama was able to just hold them off.
Yeah, and Mississippi's been a decent squad this year. They've this is now their second game against a more or less than legit opponent. They put up like 70 something on a team earlier this year. I don't remember who it was, but the second half of that Tulane game, they really shined. They handled Georgia Tech with ease and kind of just fumbling the bag to Alabama this week. We'll cover it more Friday, but that puts you in a real bind coming up against LSU.
Yeah, it was honestly not the best showing. Okay, so it was 7-6 at halftime, and then after, so that's when I stopped paying attention to it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it was 17-7, and I was just like, oh, okay, what happened there? And then Alabama scored a touchdown early in the fourth quarter to kind of cement it, as Ole Miss wasn't able to score anything except for that early touchdown. And Milroe's numbers again, like 17 of 21 passing, so it just kind of seems like they don't trust him to throw the ball too much, because those are good numbers in terms of percentages, but only 225 yards passing, one of those touchdown pass and one of them an interception. So he ran the ball 16 times, which I kind of expected him to do. He has fast legs, but even then he rushed only 28 yards. So Alabama's going to have to really start to figure it out before they do get into some of those bigger games.
Yeah, I mean, like I had mentioned on Monday, and we talked a little bit to our buddy Fat Zach, definitely missing baby Tua.
Yeah, and he
But
played.
yeah, no, say I've never in my life and college football fandom have seen Alabama struggle so much in a specific position as big as the quarterback. They really have zero excuses. I mean, um, recruiting wise, they get umpteen picks. You know, they're 5 stars, sit on the bench for a year. I mean, this is very out of the ordinary for a guy like Nick Saban.
Yeah, I mean, I can't sit there and say that Alabama's always had the best quarterbacks in terms of like NFL draft stock or anything.
No, but they've always had guys who could get it done.
Yeah,
in their current position,
guys who don't throw a lot of interceptions, turn the ball over, keep Alabama with
right.
so they could rumble and tumble downfield. They run the ball really well almost all the time. And that's something I even noticed is that Milroe's running the ball just about as much as a top running back, but not for a lot of yards by any means. And I mean, you could serve that up to SEC defense. Ole Miss has a very good defense that's ready for the run, and you have to be ready for the run in the SEC. But yeah, I mean, Alabama has some time still to figure it out. I think they have a bye week coming up, and then they get Texas A&M. And will Milroe still be the starter come that game? I mean, I haven't seen anything better. He's been better than Buckner game and better than the other quarterback that I can't remember. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see if the Alabama does get a second or third loss this year, because it seems like they're not a team that's going to finish 11-1 and go to an SEC title game, but it remains to be seen until you beat Alabama.
Yeah, and I'm not going on record saying Nick Saban doesn't know how to coach, but
yeah,
obviously having this plethora of 5-star commits in every position helps a lot, and he's kind of struggling without. But obviously, unlike the Notre Dame game, you can't always chalk it up to coaching. This has been a very physical part on the offense alone. But while we're waiting for more on SEC for Friday, let's jump into our last rank versus rank matchup. Our boys in the Big Ten, Utah, putting up a big fat goose egg.
Oh, you mean Iowa?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said Utah.
I apologize. I meant Iowa.
Yeah,
Iowa putting up 0 after those comments. I don't know his name. I forget. Brian Ferentz, maybe.
Yeah.
The get your step ladder and crawl out of my ass. We just put up 41. Well, he just lost 31-0 on television.
You know, that this can't say we didn't call this. We did say this was going to happen.
And Penn State's a very, very impressive team.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for a while. I think that they have a shot at being better than Michigan this year. I haven't seen Michigan really go out there and prove that they are the top tier team in the Big Ten by a landslide this year. I still think it's very possible they are, but Penn State's looked very impressive. It finally looks like they've got an offense, which I think throughout the years has been one of their main struggles, is putting up an offense that could get a lot of points in big bunches. They're doing a little bit of everything right now and successfully doing the defensive end of everything as well. I mean, they're just super impressive to watch. I haven't seen any faults in their games yet this year. And we'll see what kind of opponents they have coming up, but you're placing a ranked team. Iowa's always a really good defense, and they went out there and took care of business. So I can't say I expect anything else. I'm excited to see where Penn State ends up. I know that you've had like these dreams of like seeing different teams in the Final Four this year, and Penn State might be able to fulfill that prophecy for you.
Yeah. I don't know that they're better than Michigan, but I do think Michigan and Penn State are both better than Ohio State. So makes us look a little worse. But as far as the Big Ten showdown goes, that is going to be a fun game later on in the year.
Yeah, I don't know if they're on each other's schedules for sure, as I know that they have a lot of teams in there now. But it's going to be either way, if they're both in separate sides of the conference, like you will even have Penn State versus Michigan in a championship. But I think that they're all on the same side. I think Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State are all on the same side of the conference. So,
yeah. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't mind Penn State sneaking in there. And did you watch? Did you get to watch that game, bro?
the Penn State game?
Yeah.
It was on the extra TV at the time. They weren't the main focus because of the hour of which they played.
Coming out of the tunnel and the icy white crowd. I mean, if you're Iowa, Iowa. Jesus, what am I doing today? You just got to be scared shitless going in there.
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, the atmosphere is just energetic and crazy. It's
what I called to. And just looking really quick at Penn State's schedule going forward, they do get Ohio State in the middle of October, and then Michigan in the middle of November. The thing that I noticed right away, though, with the Michigan game is that it's an 11 a.m. start at Penn State. So that white crowd in the nighttime of probably a decently cold night come November, I thought that would be a huge advantage for Penn State. But an 11 a.m. game, I know that the crowd will still be rocking, but I think it does give them a little bit more of an advantage to not having to play in that darkness.
So in middle of November, is Michigan going to have to play Penn State, Ohio State back-to-back weeks, or is there a gap?
I think there's a gap in there because, there's 3 weeks left. There's 2 weeks left in the season for – excuse me. It'll be Penn State, Maryland, and then Ohio State. So all of the teams haven't lost a game yet. They just haven't ranked Maryland quite yet. So
it brings us back full circle to Baby Tua. Our first unranked big match, Florida State barely holding on to Clemson in overtime.
So this was a very exciting game. I watched all of it. I was cheering for the over in it, which ended up pushing, which was unbelievable because it was 24-24 throughout the whole entire fourth quarter. I didn't think there was a chance that this was going to push or not cover, and it ended up getting to the point of having to go into overtime. Clemson looked like they were going to take this game for a long part of it. Honestly, they looked like they were the better team for a little bit. And Florida State was able to get a big turnover that they scored a touchdown on turnover that kind of flipped the momentum for a moment there. And then Florida State was able to score another touchdown. And I honestly just being able to watch the whole game, like Clemson just looked like a much more competent team than what we saw earlier in the year against Duke. They were able to score in the red zone, which was their big fault when they played Duke early in the season. And it kind of looked like they were going to put them away, but Florida State kept on going for it. Jordan Travis played great football to step up for his team there late. So Florida State was able to pull it out.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I wake up for my day job about 3 a.m. So I ended up falling asleep towards the end of that first game, the Rutgers, Michigan, Florida State, and Clemson game. And then I woke up and I was like, what the hell, Colorado's playing now? And I was a little lost, but by the time I went back, looked at some highlights and read some stats, I'm a little upset I did miss the end of that game, but I dozed off and needed some energy for Notre Dame to break my heart later in the night.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this was probably my second favorite game of the day to watch. I mean, not that Notre Dame ended up being my favorite game to finish, but
it was a great game.
Yeah, it was enjoyable, and that's what this game was. This game was very enjoyable. It really felt like Clemson was going to get the win and steal that game. And God only knows where we'd be today. I know Florida State ended up losing a spot in the rankings because of this performance. But Clemson had a good shot there to pull it away, and they just didn't late. They had many opportunities. They mismanaged the clock. It just kind of seemed like another one where coaching kind of might have gotten in the way of some of this for Clemson there late, but nothing to the amount of how Notre Dame was cost. But, Clemson had some opportunities, a little bit of better clock management, different play calling, they would have had a good shot here.
Yeah. So Jordan Travis, new Tiger King, gets Clemson, gets LSU. It seems fitting, and I think I actually saw a report or notification pop up from Bleacher Report that I think Joe Exotic. Is he in prison? I don't even know, but I believe he stood by that. He's like, yeah, you know what, he can have it.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the Tiger King. I watched the first season of it, and I don't even know how I got through it. I think I was just really bored during the pandemic because
COVID shut down.
Yeah, it wasn't anything that great as much as it was made to be this big phenomenon.
Working 40 hours a week, I don't think I would have made time in my schedule for Tiger King, but I'm not upset that I did at the time.
Yeah, absolutely not. And that's exactly where I am with it as well. I can't even remember too much about the show because I think like the first 2 episodes were funny, and then it was just kind of on the TV throughout the rest of the time. So
it was background noise for my heavy drinking.
Yeah, during the pandemic. But yeah, the Jordan Travis, big win for him. It was the first time Florida State has won. I think they've lost 7 straight games coming into that against Clemson. So, you got them once. You're going to have to do it again next year. Then I could call you the Tiger King.
I know. I just found out this on College Game Day that obviously he was a transfer, but he actually asked his coach to be moved over to wide receiver to stay in the game because he thought he'd lost his spot. And his coach told him, he's like, no, kid, you're special. You just got to keep pushing. And sure as shit, here we are today.
Yeah, leading a top 5 team in the nation, a team that's going to have a really good shot at going to the college football playoff as long as they stay undefeated. I think that, they're going to have some tough matchups ahead. We're looking at Duke and North Carolina right now, the basketball schools that want to play football. It's just that's kind of the state of the ACC right now. I think Florida State's kind of going to be that team that's thought to be on top until, I think it's very possible they can lose a game. They played 2 close ones in back-to-back weeks in ACC play. I think it's going to be tough for them to stay undefeated this year just because of these performances, and teams know that they have an opportunity to get to them.
Yeah, one of the teams they knocked off, LSU, they did not look so great against Arkansas on Saturday.
Yeah.
LSU, it was a field goal, or it was definitely a 1-score loss.
LSU coming off of a game where I was praising them for how great they looked. Then they come out and have this dud a week later against an Arkansas team that I thought that they would handle. LSU I thought was getting scary, but here we are. They didn't come that well prepared. And I don't know if that's what I want to chalk it up to exactly. It's just who knows what this LSU team really is at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've mentioned before. Like, I'm a big believer in momentum comes and goes in college football, and coming off like big wins, big emotional games and stuff, I feel like that happens so more often than not. But does Arkansas look good or does LSU look bad? That was my question for the day. I didn't really get to watch all of it. I had it on and off in parts, but when you're thinking LSU, you have Brian Kelly, you have these amazing quarterbacks. They were supposed to be top 5, never should have lost to Florida State, but they just continue to claw back, and then they look shitty, and then they claw back some more, and it feels like a cycle they're going through.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas did have a loss coming into this game earlier in the year. I think it was actually last week. They lost to BYU. BYU is normally a pretty damn good school.
Yeah, I think we'd mentioned that on Monday too.
Yeah, and BYU ended up playing Kansas this week in a game that Kansas ended up winning, and Kansas is undefeated right now this year. BYU was able to beat Arkansas by 7, so it just kind of leaves that door open to more questions in terms of LSU. I don't think this is an Arkansas team that's very great by any means. Maybe a 6-6 team come the end of the year battling to try and get into a bowl game, the Idaho Fiesta Bowl or whatever you want to call it, Idaho Potato Bowl. That's it. So it doesn't look like I would say that this is just more LSU and Brian Kelly, just mediocrity. It seems to be what Brian Kelly brings. He's a good head football coach, but can't get over the hump of just being mid.
Right. And we talked about it earlier weeks ago, maybe on the show, that it kind of broke my heart. He goes into LSU and beats Alabama his first year there, and I'm just sitting here like, what the fuck? Like, you managed to wear out your welcome at Notre Dame. You left your players in disarray, just didn't even tell them in person, and then now this is going on, and you lose to Florida State. You don't play well against
Arkansas,
and it's a Brian Kelly we know and love. So that's that always keeps me rolling a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll see when they get into more of these games. I mean, they perform one week, they don't the next. I expect we could kind of see that going for the rest of the season. They'll be an interesting team to watch, and I'm sure we'll always make comments just because, I hate that people want to say that Brian Kelly lives a little bit rent-free in our head, and well, he kind of does in a way just because he leaves a salty taste in our mouth. To root against, you got to find your things that you like to root against as much as you got to find the things you like to root for, and there's something I root against.
Yeah, call me petty. I don't care. It doesn't affect me at all. Maybe he does live rent free in my head. That's fine, but at the end of the day, he's not my problem anymore. Sticking down south, moving over, Texas just dismantled Baylor.
Yeah, as expected, I would say. It was something that I put on my betting card for the week just because I didn't think Baylor was going to be able to contain a Texas team, and Texas was able to go out there and score quick and easy on them. Baylor might have hung around for the first quarter, and then it was all Texas there.
I think they put up 6. I'm not entirely sure. I don't even know if it was 2 field goals or a touchdown and a missed extra point or 3 safeties. That game I did not watch, but I know we talked about it a little bit on Friday, so I was checking in every so often.
Yeah, that wasn't something that I paid much attention to either, but definitely wanted to just mention it really quick there. And then another one that we've been kind of keeping up with North Carolina in the ACC. North Carolina handles Pitt. Didn't seem like there was too many issues there for North Carolina as they continue to stay on top of things. And with that, we could kind of get into a little bit more of our new ranked matchups for the year. Or not ranked matchups, top 25 list that came out yesterday.
New people.
Yeah, so still number 1, no change. Georgia's going to stay number 1 until someone could beat them, back-to-back national champions. So no change
55
there.
First place votes.
Yeah, and then Michigan, ranked number 2 still. I think that there is a little bit more doubt coming in on Michigan just because they haven't gone out there and had that dominating win, even with Harbaugh back this past week. So Texas is gaining on them in terms of the AP poll, but they haven't taken it away from them yet. Michigan still has time to sit there and prove they are the true number 2. I know Texas has to be playing Oklahoma soon, so that will be a big matchup for them. I know it's normally early on in the season.
Michigan only got 44 more votes than Texas for second place, and Texas actually got more first place votes than Michigan. So the doubters are definitely coming out. I don't have last week's AP at my fingertips, but I remember I looked at it last week too, and I mentioned something to you off camera about it.
Yeah.
But,
it's going to be interesting to see, if Michigan comes out there and struggles again, where they end up putting them. We kind of highlighted earlier that Michigan ends the season with a lot of their tougher games instead of their early season Big Ten matchups being tough. It's more towards the end of the year. Not saying that they don't got tough ones coming up, but, games that they probably should be able to handle. And then the main thing that kind of changed here in the top 5, at least. Allergies are getting me.
Bless you, man. Get it together.
Ohio State is moved up to number 4 after the win this week. Florida State moved down.
Florida State up 2 spots. Or I'm sorry, Ohio State 2 spots.
Yeah, so they kind of like Ohio State for this week with the win against Notre Dame, as expected. You get a big win, you kind of get a little bit more favoritism. And oh, man, I need a Kleenex.
Get it together, buddy. Apart from Georgia's 55 number 1 votes, Florida State actually has the second most. They're in the 5th spot with 3 first-place votes.
Yeah, so, geez. Give me 1 second here. I got to get Kleenex. I can't talk.
All right. 6 and 7, Penn State, Washington, both 4-0, both moving up 1 single spot. And Bruce off camera, but we like talking about Michael Penix Jr. They actually got a first-place vote. So that's kind of cool to see someone outside the top 5, or I guess one team that is 5 and one team outside the top 5 having 4 total. But USC loses 3 spots after a rough-ish loss to Arizona State on Saturday night. I know that was a game I watched immediately after Notre Dame, just try and get a little more college football in my life to drown out my tears. Oregon absolutely dismantling Colorado. We had mentioned before, snuck into the 9th spot, moving up 1 spot from last week, and Utah moving up 1 more to 10, rounding off the top 10. Notre Dame now, we're getting into losses on the schedule. Notre Dame's at 11, first team with a loss. They dropped 2 spots, which is very worrisome because watching, like their open field tackles and stuff, I don't see any way they could beat USC now. And 1 loss not in the conference might as well be a nail in the coffin. 2 is not even in a conversation.
Yeah, there was a stat in there that they showed early in the broadcast that Notre Dame was ranked like 120th or something in missed open field tackles. So, and it continues to show. And playing USC, that's not going to work with that offense, no matter how good the defense is against them, because USC is still going to score even if your defense is good. It's not going to be the same thing playing Kyle McCord in Ohio State. So if Notre Dame doesn't get their tackling together in the open field, they're definitely going to have a hard time with USC. And I mean, ranked number 11, it's not as bad as it could be. I don't think.
No, it's much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with their strength of schedule and who they do have to play, if they win out, they're going to be in the conversation. Whether they get in, it might be a little difficult because they'll have that conference championship week and they'll go with the conference champions a lot of time over going with the team that doesn't get to play that game, because you just don't get that last eye test that you kind of want. And that's what a lot of the judgment seems to come down to at the end of the year, which, the new college football playoff rules in terms of being in the playoff, it's going to make things a lot easier on Notre Dame going forward to always be in the conversation. And kind of one of the only good things that kind of stays from not being inside a conference in that point.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps because we're, towards the end of the Brian Kelly era, we're sitting here like, at least it's gone through my mind, like they're not. First off, the writers, like a lot of fans, if you don't love them, you hate them. They love shitting on Notre Dame football. A lot of them don't want to see them in there. You don't get that extra game. And if you're Swarbrick and you're putting these schedules together, you don't want to join a conference. You want to keep your TV deal with NBC, whatever it may be, tradition. You have to go 12-0 every year. Maybe you sneak in with 1 loss if it's to an Ohio State or to a Georgia or to a Michigan. But so many other moving parts need to happen at the same time. So many other teams at the same caliber have to lose along with them.
Yeah, I mean, like in this instance, I think you would have to be asking for Ohio State to win out this year.
I was talking to Fat Zach about that on Saturday. Like, they're not going to beat USC. Maybe they do. that would be fantastic. But I don't see Ohio State beating Michigan or Penn State.
Yeah, I don't see it either. So,
week
sometimes
4, I'm calling it.
Yeah.
Throwing in the hat.
Sometimes you are what you are. And that might be the case for Notre Dame, but not going to stop me from hoping that they do somehow get in there. And then, if they do go 11-1 and it breaks my heart and we got to play in whatever bowl game in the New Year's.
Yeah, some New Year's Six bowl that's just going to make me sad anyways.
Yeah. So, I think right now the thing to cheer for in terms of that is Marcus Freeman just being able to put this team together. Him and his coaching staff improve as well. And keep the progression of what can be Notre Dame moving forward. So,
after Notre Dame in the top 25, get off our homerism for the past 5 minutes. Alabama moves up a spot and LSU moves down a spot, keeping the SEC at 12 and 13.
It flips two teams that will play each other in a month. Two teams are going to play each other. We'll decide who the better team is at that point. But, does Alabama go into that game with a second loss? Does LSU go into that game with a second loss already? It's very possible, seeing how they both have struggled so far.
Yeah, LSU, I'd mentioned earlier, has Ole Miss on Saturday. Not sure about Alabama. We'll kind of circle back to that on Friday. But, we're past that threshold. The real games are coming now.
Yep. I mean, I know that the SEC does work like SWAC week in there, and that's like the second to last week of the season where they'll do like Alabama versus Western Carolina, and that's But other than that, it's SEC football here and out for those teams, so it'll be interesting to see. Number 14, Oklahoma.
Kind of still just floating around in the teens.
I watched most of that game. It was an 11 a.m. start. I had 3 TVs on with 3 games that I bet on. It was a game that I pushed because I got Oklahoma minus 14. They won 20-6. Oklahoma ended up going down to minus 13.5, like an hour and a half before game time. So I put my bet in a little bit too early. But I got the push on that one. Good for it. It really wasn't impressive by any means. Cincinnati came in this game at a low point, coming off of a loss. Doesn't look like Cincinnati's the same school that they've been over the last 3 seasons. And Oklahoma was able to take care of it. Cincinnati stayed in it the whole way, though. But it really was not anything eye-popping. Oklahoma's still just kind of there. The quarterback play, the kid looks like he could take a hit. I mean, he's definitely willing to run with the football. But
drop a shoulder, get a little dirty.
Yeah, but overall, just a normal basic win for Oklahoma. To see who they really are, see if they can be a top 20 team at the end of the year. It'll come down to facing Texas and seeing how they perform in that game and how they perform against the rest of the Big 12, which a lot of these games are coming up going forward. So just like that, I mean, they're pretty much done with conference play or non-conference play. Time to get into all the rivalries that they have for the year that they have left in the Big 12 before they go to the SEC and have it even more difficult.
Yeah. I think it'll help them a little recruiting wise. And they're always, like we'd mentioned several times, they're always floating around the teens, but they do have those teams every few years that come in and they're, outstanding squads. So maybe not this year, but they will be back. And I think if anything, the SEC is obviously tougher opponents, but better recruiting as well. So
yeah. They're always going to get those recruits that are in that general area, but I can see some more shifting.
Yeah.
I mean, the SEC has a nice little stranglehold on everything, and I'm sure they get quite a bit from Oklahoma and Texas as well. As we always say, that's like where the country boys play. So, big boys, not like me, who's, a 5'10" nothing. These guys are just like born 6'10". So,
fuck. 15, 16, 17, and 18, all moving up spots apiece. North Carolina doing the same thing as Oklahoma, kind of staying in that teen bubble. Drake May looked fine. They're up 2 spots total. It kind of reminded me a lot of the Minnesota game where they looked okay. Pitt looked okay in the beginning, kind of fell off a little bit. I think they put up 14 in the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter was quiet. They kind of just ran away with it. Washington State was a big one, though. 5 jumps, 5 spots.
Yeah. One thing that I could pretty much say when you look at these teams, North Carolina, Washington State, Duke, Miami, your season has a shot at the college football playoff with the conference that you play in until you lose a game. So if all you teams want to stay undefeated, you're gonna have a really good shot at being in a college football playoff, and that's what I kind of look at when you see these 15 through 18 teams that aren't normally there in terms of having a shot at it. But until you lose a game, like, you're playing for that goal. Like, you're playing for more than just a conference right now, and you'll keep on moving up. But when they have you ranked where you're at as a 4-0 team right now, I think you lose one game, and that eliminates teams like this. So there's a goal to strive for in there, though.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ACC in those 4 teams in that bubble right there. So they're going to wean each other off one at a time. Duke basketball school, they're floating at 17. They moved up a spot. I think they're a good team. I know we mentioned weeks ago they had a lot of players come back. And they look like a good squad. You know, they handled Clemson, and I'm not sure how they'll fare against the rest of the ACC. Kind of when I mentioned they'll wean each other off. I'm not sure I like them more than I like Carolina or Miami. Definitely not Florida State. But we'll have to look at schedules on that.
We'll get a good idea of what Duke really is this week. That's Notre Dame versus Duke is this weekend. A primetime start, I believe, at Duke. So there'll be a basketball school that's rocking on a Saturday night, trying to pull off the upset against the Irish. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see how that all fares. And does Duke not only contend, can they win it? I saw that it's only a 3.5-point Notre Dame favorite right now. So it's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah. Florida jumped up 2 spots, or I'm sorry, Miami jumped up 2 spots.
Yeah,
they're still kind of hanging around there. They don't look bad by any means, but kind of same situation as Duke, I feel.
Yeah, I really it's so weird because Miami being the U, you normally get a lot of attention no matter what there. And it just kind of seems like I didn't even know that they played football the last 3 weeks. I know they played that opener, but I don't remember anything else they've done. I don't remember
Miami of Ohio, that had all the buzz around it. And then Miami who?
I can't really – it's kind of interesting because I think Miami normally would schedule a team that's tough early in the season, like a highlight game, and haven't really seen that yet from them. I don't know what their schedule is. Another thing that we'd have to look and see what they got coming up. But I would think that they pretty much already have their non-conference schedule done with maybe one more game left in there. So it's going to be interesting to see. Going to have to be a team that I start to pay attention to more, just to see if Miami is back to being Miami, which people always try to hope for every couple of years or so, and then they just fall back down.
Yeah, kind of like what I was talking about with Oklahoma. They go very good for a few years, and they have an outstanding season, and then rinse, repeat, recycle. 19, Oregon State. We talked a little bit about DJ and the Beavers earlier. They dropped 5 spots.
Yeah, that's what it is when you lose, no matter what it may be, and they don't necessarily. I mean, the people who vote don't necessarily trust in you to begin with. Just kind of something that comes along with not being one of those major football schools. And I'm sure there might be something to look into it that, that Washington State, Oregon State game was also a game of the 2 teams that don't have a conference next year. They're part of the Pac-2 right now because they're the only 2 teams that haven't left the Pac-12 yet. So
they're hanging around. Solidarity.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. We already mentioned they play Utah this week. See if Cam Rising comes back, but it'll be a big game for Oregon State either way, and a chance to get back on top. I figure if they beat Utah, they're going to move up 4 or 5 spots by the end of the week. So they could be right back where they were before.
Big fun Friday night game. Ole Miss, after losing to Bama, drops 5. They're back down to 20.
Yeah,
that's fine. I think that's probably a proper ranking. Maybe they could have dropped to like 19 or 18, but with North Carolina, Washington State, Duke, Miami all remaining undefeated, obviously that's kind of hard. I like Ole Miss better than Oregon State. I might flop those if I'm making this list.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just kind of like whatever you want to do with it. I mean, it's like kind of holding an SEC biased against thing in a way. And I think that's kind of how you would be looking at it. But either way, it doesn't affect me. They still deserve to be in the top 25 after this.
Very much so, yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, the next 3 teams behind them are all SEC teams. In Tennessee, Florida, and Missouri entering the top 25. I mentioned last week that I like Missouri a lot. I think they're a sneaky good team. And here we are getting that national attention now, being ranked in the top 25 for the first time in a while. It'll be interesting to see, as once again, we keep saying it's time to play some real football. A lot of SEC versus SEC games coming up. And that's going to show for Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, and Missouri here.
Yeah, Florida, Tennessee, both moving up a couple spots. It's kind of weird how we're seeing all these clusters. Like you get X amount of ACC teams in a row, X amount of SEC teams in a row. But no, I mean, they're doing the same thing I feel that the rest of the SEC is doing, with the exception of Georgia, is they're all trying to claw back from these 1 losses so far. And Brian Kelly's leading the pack, Alabama behind him, and all these guys, Florida, Tennessee, Ole Miss, I apologize, not Ole Miss. The rest of them are all keeping that strain forward, But after Missouri, Kansas, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see that monster fucking hit, that forced fumble that Kansas player did?
Yeah, I did. I see
the BYU kid just kind of looked up and he's like, "What the hell just happened?"
Who there?
But Kansas breaking in the top 25. And I was talking to Bruno before the show started. I love Fresno State in the 25. I don't think about them a lot. And to be honest, Derek Carr and Devontae Adams are probably where most people's brain goes. But I like it. I like different. I've said it a million times, and I'm happy they're here. I hope they're here to stay.
Yeah. They were ranked at one point last year, too. I think that they're on some massive win streak right now, dating back to last year. Like they
gave up 1 or 2 early in the season and kept it rolling through this year now.
I mean, I think last year they had to play Boise State on back-to-back weeks because of playing them the last week and then playing them in conference. Here comes Nikki with the Kleenex that I asked for like over 40 minutes ago. And
the unsung hero.
I already got some. Thank you. But yeah, it's good to see them back. I don't know if they will lose a game this year. They might be that New Year's 6 non-conference team that has to go in every year, or non-Power 5 conference team. I think that there's a good chance that they are them. They're
Fresno State's that's Mountain West, right?
Yeah. So yeah, they'll see Boise State later on in the year. That's the best team in the Mountain West that everybody knows from. I mean, it's been over 20 years now of Boise State being a good school. They don't really have years where they go 6-6. Like they're always winning games a year, and they always do normally schedule tough teams. So
Kellen Moore, one of the NCAA video game covers at Blue Ass Field. They're always fun to talk about.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Fresno State continues to be looked at going on, because I don't know if there's much teams that are better than them that they play the rest of the season. They had these Power 5 conference opponents. They played Purdue early in the year. Not that Purdue's top of the line by any means.
Immaculate, but
you go and win at Purdue.
You go in Big Ten territory and come out with a win. It's big.
Yeah. So, and they've been able to prove that they could do that all of last year as well. So they're a tough team. They're a team that's going to probably hang around the top 25 for a long time. We'll see how far they get.
Yes. And really fast, I lost my spot. Kansas State, Kentucky, Colorado, Louisville, UCLA, Maryland, TCU, Tulane, Syracuse, Wisconsin, Air Force, Clemson, and Texas A&M are all teams just outside of the top 25, still receiving votes.
Yeah, go Air Force Falcons.
I'm happy Air Force is in there above Clemson.
Yeah, it's Clemson's second loss, man. Not good for them. Yeah. But
no, it's I wouldn't. I might retract what I said earlier in the year about end of the Dabo era, because they did look fine, but a loss is a loss. They'll be back next year. No playoff this year, but
yeah, and no
I
conference.
don't think the recruitment's going out the window.
Yeah, I don't think that'll be affected either. I mean, they're 0-2 in conference to start the year. It's going to be tough to keep that team motivated going forward. But they do got big games. You know, they're going to want to go beat Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, I think Clemson, they might be just a couple of players away right now from being in a different situation. I know they're a couple plays away from winning on this past Saturday, and I was talking about them probably being in the top 20. So, yeah, we'll see going forward. But that kind of rounds up the top 25. Really quick, we'll kind of go through the bets that we had this week. You know, once again, another very just their week with it. So 2 weeks in a row where it's meh. Funny thing is, I had 3 bets that I did at 11 a.m. on Saturday, and all 3 of the games that I bet on pushed. So I didn't win or lose. That's just some pretty crazy odds.
You should win something just for that.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Cody Parkey hitting the uprights.
That's just saying that these bookmakers really know what the heck they're doing. So, you know, it was
like we were saying on Friday, like, oh yeah, you know, when it's between 69 and 72 degrees and the dew point is X amount, and
yeah,
all these weird considerations coming together.
You definitely. So FSU and Clemson push, Oklahoma, Cincy push. I ended up throwing money on Rutgers at plus 24, and that pushed. And that's all I had at 11 a.m. I did lose on Friday night with Purdue. They were not very good at all against Wisconsin. Wisconsin might be the team that comes out of that other side, the west side of the Big Ten, just because they might just be the best team in it.
Purdue's been beating you up this year.
Yeah, and, you know, whatever. We had Maryland versus MSU. Maryland covered. It got scary late that MSU might end up covering the spread, but Maryland was up big early, and I pulled away again late. So
that was like 14.5 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 7.5.
Oh, 7.5.
Yeah, so Michigan State had the ball down.
Maybe it was Michigan State, Washington the prior week. That was 14.5 that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. But yeah, it was 7.5 with Maryland. Maryland got up big. Michigan State ended up getting competitive, got close. They were down 15. So I was sitting there thinking, like, if they score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion, they'll cover it. They didn't. That didn't happen. Maryland ended up putting up more points and handled it. The one surprising loss of the week for me was Wake Forest and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech handled business, beat Wake Forest. Wake Forest not able to score, not able to not turn the ball over. Just wasn't a really good performance from them. So Georgia Tech covered. They were +4. They won the game straight up. They were, I think it was by 11 points. So not a great pick there. Ended up getting a win with Texas over Baylor pretty easily. Got a win with Penn State over Iowa pretty easily. Got a win with North Carolina over Pitt. Pitt hung around for a bit, but North Carolina ended up taking care of business. Lost the Notre Dame money line. Take it for what it is. if you would have taken out the spread, you would have covered with Notre Dame. So Colorado and Oregon over did not hit because
what a heartbreaker.
Scored. Oregon put up 42, and they didn't really keep trying to score in the second half. They're putting in their backups. Colorado only scoring late. I expected this to be like 35-14 at halftime. I didn't expect Colorado to get completely shut down like they did. And I thought 35-14 at halftime. Oregon gets to 56 points at least themselves, probably a 56-21 final or something like that. And Colorado didn't help at all. And then the last one, a positive weekend on our hands once again, which is nice. We've only had one weekend where it pushed completely. We were 5-5. This week we are up 1 unit. So, but we finished it off with your pick of the week. Charlotte
4-0.
4-0 with the underdogs of the week.
Unlike Notre Dame, 4-0.
Yeah, so Charlotte plus 28. Honestly, I watched a little bit of this game because it started at a weird time and it was a little in between before the Notre Dame game started. And
it was like a 6:00 start, right?
Yeah. So Florida scored right away. And I was like, this is not going to go well. Then Florida kicked 3 straight field goals. It was 16-0. And then Charlotte scored a touchdown. And I was just like, well, Florida can't put the ball in the end zone, so this might work out. And I mean, it never got scary. Even Charlotte was an easy cover at plus 28 over Florida. So congratulations to you again. I continue to throw money on whatever you say, and it keeps on working out in my favor as well. So good job.
I wish I would just keep betting what I say I'm going to bet on the show and not touch anything else, because I keep winning my one pick a week. I keep losing everything else I touch. So
yeah. So
I'm just giving away money at this point.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way from time to time because of the stupid bets I do on the side. Like, I'd be positive if I didn't make such dumb extra bets that I don't tell everyone about.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to hit before we sign off here. I don't have any good news for the week. I'm sorry. Nothing. No feel good story. Ryan Day just rips Lou Holtz in half.
Oh, yeah. Ohio
Come on, dude. He's 112 years old.
Yeah. Well, I don't expect anything less from Ryan Day. That's the first time he's actually won any big games since becoming the head coach at Ohio State. I don't see too many more coming in your future. They're gonna get you out of there. They don't want you to be the head coach of Ohio State, Ryan Day.
He was handed life on a silver platter.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So I just thought that was hilarious. And like, Lou Holtz is probably like putting in his hearing aid on his flip phone. Like, what did he say about me?
Yeah, Ryan Day, like, whatever, man. You're trash still. I don't care.
Yeah, maybe that's a loss talking, but you know what? Bruno, you got anything else for us?
No, we got another week of work ahead of us, and then we can start having fun again come next weekend. So, we'll try and keep things posted. Look us up on Twitter. We try to stay interactive on there throughout the week if any stories break. And we'll keep you updated with anything that happens. Normally when we get out of here, some breaking news comes in. So expect that.
Try and stretch us out an extra 2 minutes just in case something decides to break.
Yeah.
We do see your guys' comments on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you guys very much for watching. We hope you enjoy the content that we keep putting out. We are here twice a week for usually about an hour, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. I know today's running a little long. But, Brew, talk to you during the week. We'll get some more stuff going. We'll talk about Friday. And all you guys have a great week. This has been College Football on Tap, brought to you by On Tap Sportsnet. Have a good one.
See ya.